Happy Monday. On today's episode of the John Campea Show podcast, Disney has just pulled Jonathan Majors' upcoming movie Magazine Dreams off their release schedule. Disney has now confirmed in a new book that Wanda actually died in Doctor Strange 2. And did she ultimately maybe have the best overall story arc of any character in the MCU? Also, the actor strike could be over by the end of this show today. We'll discuss that. Matthew Perry has, of course, passed away at the age of 54, and we're going to talk a little bit about why a lot of fans are taking his death harder than a lot of other celebrity deaths that happened. Daredevil has a brand new showrunner, and it's the old producer and writer from the Netflix Punisher series. The Snow White remake has been pushed by about a year, and Five Nights at Freddy's has just crushed the box office. That and a whole bunch more. The John Campea Show podcast starts right now. Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to the best damn movie-related show on the planet Earth, the John Campea Show podcast, coming to you from right here in our quaint little studio, brought to you in part by our friends at Mint Mobile. I'm, of course, your host, John Campea, and it is an awesome honor and privilege, as it is every day, to have you, our international friends, gather around as we talk about our favorite things in the world, movies and movie news, TV and streaming, and all sorts of good things, not just giving you our opinions, but giving you some context and information so you guys can form your own well-informed opinions, whether they're the same or a little bit different from ours. Joining me today, we got Ray Ora.
Hey.
Jonathan Voikos here.
Morning.
Writer, director, producer, Robert Meyer Burnett.
Hello.
And most importantly, you guys are here. Thanks for being here, making this show part of your day. Here's how today's show is going to go. We're going to start off by going over all those topics I just listed off. Then in the last part of the show, we're going to take your comments and questions. Now, we already put out our community post to our beloved YouTube channel members, asking them to submit some topics. But also, if you guys are joining us live right now, you can use the super chat feature in the live chat to send in some thoughts, theories, questions, and if they're appropriate to be used on our show, we'll address them at the end of our show. I got a whole bunch of stuff to talk about today, but I want to start off with this. File this one under more things I need to worry about. People go to they'll go to a Lakers game and Kobe will point in the eye and someone goes, "Oh, Kobe was pointing at me." Or so-and-so waved at me in the crowd. It's like, no, they didn't. So last night, my wife Ann, I don't know if you know this, big fan of the Jonas Brothers, particularly Joe Jonas. I think my wife threw a pre-divorce party for Joe Jonas when they announced that he was splitting with his Game of Thrones girl. Anyway, so Ann's gone to about 35 Jonas Brothers concerts in the last 3 months. She goes to the Jonas Brothers a lot. She's brought me to a bunch of, and hey, listen, I got to say, those boys put on a good show. I got to say it. I'm secure enough in my masculinity that I can say Jonas Brothers, they do put on a hell of a show. So Ann goes last night, and she starts texting me from the show. Her and her friends go to the show at the Anaheim, the Honda Center in Anaheim, big hockey stadium, basketball stadium, whatever. And she starts texting me like, Joe Jonas keeps looking at me. I'm like, and I'm just thinking to myself, sure, baby. And then all the other girls like, Joe Jonas is constantly staring at Ann. I'm like, no. And then, as if I don't have enough to worry about in my life, they send me this video. So check this out. Ann clearly having a good time. And then she comes into frame. Yeah, here she comes. Clearly bored. And sure enough, what the fuck, Jonas? He's just constant. So, yeah. That's as if I don't have enough to worry about in my life. Now I got to worry about Joe fucking Jonas. But whatever, Ann had a good time. That's all that matters. How do you like that Halloween jacket? Her friend made that for her.
Pretty dope. I was going to say the outfit was working for her.
She has a, you remember she used to work at Hasbro.
Yeah. She
has a designer at Hasbro. It's a friend of hers. She actually designed and made that coat for her.
A very cool coat.
Yeah, very cool Halloween coat. She pulls that out all the time. All right, guys. With my troubles out of the way, let's move on to somebody else's troubles, like Jonathan Majors' troubles. You guys will remember last week that a big story came out that Jonathan Majors and his attorneys submitted a motion in court to dismiss the assault charges that he's facing, and the judge rejected the motion, saying that this trial is going to now proceed. There's enough evidence here to support the idea that you need to stand trial for this. So the trial is going to start November 28th. Well, like a little over a week after November 28th is supposed to be the release of Jonathan Majors' new film, Magazine Dreams. Movie about a bodybuilder, right? And it looks really interesting and really cool. Well, not surprisingly, news has now come out that Disney has pulled Magazine Dreams from their release schedule. This comes from the folks at CNN who write the following. Disney has removed a film project starring actor Jonathan Majors, who's amazing, by the way, who is set to stand trial for assault next month from its release calendar. Magazine Dreams, a movie in which Majors plays an amateur bodybuilder, was originally slated for release on December 8th. In an email shared with CNN on Friday, the studio indicated the film no longer has a release date. The movie was directed by Elijah Bynum and also stars Haley Bennett. It was acquired by Searchlight after receiving acclaim at Sundance earlier this year. All right, so the movie's been pulled off the release schedule. Now, I want to make something perfectly clear. They have not scrapped the movie. They have just for now pulled it off the release schedule. And before anybody starts whining and complaining about, well, the guy hasn't been found guilty yet. Of course he hasn't. But understand the position that the studio is in right now. They just found out that like 9 or 10 days before their movie's supposed to come out, an assault trial with their main star begins. That means all the headlines are not going to be about this movie. They know all the headlines and all the social media discussion is going to be this big trial that has just started. So the studio, Rob, I got to say this. This is common sense. Like you make movies to make money. And one of the primary ways to make money is to have solid buzz, awareness, all this kind of stuff. And the studio has just been faced with something that, oh, the thing in the news is going to be our star standing trial. So they're going to take a step back. And I guarantee you this, if he's acquitted, you're going to hear about a new release date really quick. Not that the release date would be early, but you'll hear them announce a new release date really fast. They just don't want to release this movie when that's what's going to be the headline. So I don't know, Rob, you heard about this story. Does it surprise you, not surprise you? How do you see this?
No, I think you summed it up quite well, very succinctly. I mean, there would be no other story. And, you know, the funny thing about it is, this is a very serious allegation. It needs to be addressed. It needs to go through the legal system, and everybody needs to be properly represented. That is the most important thing. It's very different from the release of a movie. That said, I do feel bad for the filmmakers. It's so hard to get a movie made. You know, they won the lottery in that it did well at Sundance. It gets acquired by Fox Searchlight, which is now just Searchlight at Disney, and it was going to get a major release for everybody involved in that film. And I mean the director, the writer, all the crew had a lot to be proud of. And I can't help but feel bad for them that this movie, again, this had a lot of, ever since this movie came out, it's had to deal with this situation. I hope at the end of the day that Jonathan Majors is acquitted, but if he did do something wrong, justice must be served. It must be served.
And look, again, to anybody who would object, and I've seen some people objecting this, it's like this. If you're the head of a studio, your job with this is a product. This movie is a product. It's art, but it's still a product, and you're trying to make money with it. Are you going to make more money with this movie, releasing it 1 week after a very high-profile assault charges trial starts, or are you going to make more money with this movie, say, 4 months after an acquittal is announced, after the trial? Well, clearly that's when you're going to make more money. Now, what's interesting, Rob, is what do they do with the movie? By the way, we are not insinuating at all that he's going to be found guilty. I'm just saying, what does Disney now do with this movie if what none of us want to have happen, he's found guilty, and I don't want him to be found guilty because I don't want the allegations to be true, not because I don't want him held responsible. I'm just saying we're all hoping it's not true. But if he goes through court and he's found guilty, what does Disney do with this movie?
Bury it.
Yeah.
I mean, unfortunately, all that work, especially, you know, and maybe, look, even I have to say, if these allegations are serious and if he's found guilty of these allegations, do we want to support that? And as much as, like, I get conflicted by these things. I mean, we've had the eternal debate, even on this show, the art or the artist? You know, what do you do? How do you differentiate the two? And I would say that the people that get caught up in all this, the filmmakers themselves who aren't a part of this, you know, they hired an actor. You know, they didn't hire an actor's personal life, even though that's what happened. And all this work, and they went to Sundance. They did everything that they as filmmakers were supposed to do. And then this gets derailed, and it comes on them, and their movie gets suppressed or nobody gets to see it. And I have to say, I feel terrible about that. I also feel terrible about bad behavior and people being victimized, which is awful as well. So no one will win.
Yeah, this is a no-win situation for everybody. All right, guys. With that down, let's move on to this, shall we? You know, ever since Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, think of what you will about that movie, but one of the things that was really positive that came out of the movie for me was I kind of started to feel that Wanda might be the single best story arc and character arc in all of the MCU. And a lot of debate has gone on about whether or not at the end of Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, whether she actually died. Well, apparently there's a new book officially from Marvel that is saying she did die in it. And that is actually the topic of today's Mint Mobile hotline question of the day. Listen, if you guys have a question for our show and you'd like to hear your voice on our show, go ahead and call our Mint Mobile hotline anytime 24/7 at 951-268-4259. Every day we pick out one or two, and today's is about, is Scarlet Witch really dead? Check it out.
Good morning, crew. Joey here from California. I just saw an article from comicbook.com that said that Elizabeth Olsen's Scarlet Witch character did not survive the events of the Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness movie. Says that she didn't survive everything that happened on Mount Wondercore. That's crazy. I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts. Just, hopefully hear this on the show. Thanks and have a great day. Bring on the filthy.
All right, Joey, thanks a lot for calling that in. And yeah, so of course, in the Marvel Cinematic Fake Death universe, a death is never really a death, right? But, you know, sometimes there's coming back from the dead, or a character was never dead at all in the first place. And ever since the end of Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, one of the debates has been, did Scarlet Witch actually die? Well, apparently, like Joey said, according to a new book, that debate's over. She did. This comes to us from Screen Rant. However, in the new book titled Marvel Studios, The Marvel Cinematic Universe, An Official Timeline, Scarlet Witch's tragic demise appears to be confirmed. As the book says, Wanda destroys Wondergore and collapses it upon herself, ending two great threats to the multiverse. Additionally, the entry in the book has a symbol meant as denoting when a major character death, officially confirming Scarlet Witch's fate. Okay, so now obviously with this being the Marvel Cinematic Fake Death universe, just because a character dies, that does not mean they can't come back later. But at least half of the debate is over. Did she actually die at the end? Yes, she did. She crushed herself and killed herself. Now, I've been reading a couple of articles, including the full article from Screen Rant, which by the way is a really well-written piece. And there are some people who believe, well, this isn't right. This isn't fair. We wanted Wanda to have a happy ending. She didn't get the end she deserved. And, you know, that's not an unpopular sentiment amongst a lot of people. But for me, and let's just discuss this as if this is finale. We've heard, you know, Elizabeth Olsen talking a lot about her career in the MCU in past tense. It sounds like she's moving on. She could be back, but let's, for the sake of this discussion, assume her time in the MCU is over. Scarlet Witch is done. I disagree with this sentiment that everybody deserves a happy ending. I as far as fiction goes, I don't. That's not always the most interesting or the most compelling narrative to tell. And I think out of all the characters in the MCU, Steve Rogers has an incredible story arc. Tony has an incredible story arc. But to me, the story arc of Scarlet Witch, if she's indeed over now, is actually one of the boldest and most interesting story arcs. No, I'll say the most interesting story arc to me out of any character in the MCU. It's a Shakespearean tragedy. Like when you look at the character of Wanda, because you know, one of the things I love, a theme in movies that I love is a movie that explores what happens to people in pain and what pain does to people, what loss does to people. I've always been fascinated by that. WandaVision is a story about a girl who lost her family, became a scientific guinea pig to Hydra. She lost her brother. She had to kill the love of her life, and found out that her sacrifice was meaningless because Thanos just brought him back to kill him again. She had to watch the love of her life die twice, which led us to the events of WandaVision, where even this fake reprieve from her suffering got taken away from her, ultimately leading to the events of Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness 2, where it broke her. And listen, that is the classic villain origin story, right? Whenever we meet, the difference is we met Wanda as a hero. We normally meet these villains long after they were good, right? Long after they went through their suffering, their loss, their pain, and how that then shaped them. And ultimately, Wanda kind of had a Vader ending. Like she didn't get her redemption, but at the last minute, she made the right choice. She saved, the universe and all that kind of stuff, and sacrificed herself in doing it. And to me, it is a Shakespearean story of great tragedy and what pain does to people, and ultimately driven by this woman who's had everything taken from her whole life, just wanting her kids back, even though those kids were never real. It's powerful. It's palpable. And it's not something that comic book movies will normally have the balls to do. And they did it. And that's why I kind of hope that is the end for Scarlet, that she had this incredible story arc. And really, Rob, when you look at the events of Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, she murdered a lot of people.
She did.
There's no coming back and being able to have a happily ever after that, right? There's just no coming back from that. I thought it was great. It is kind of interesting. The book now confirms the character is dead. Anyway, you saw this. What did you think about Scarlet Witch's overall character arc? And what do you think about the book confirming that, yeah, she died?
Well, to quote the great John Campea, this is the Marvel fake death universe. And this book is, by the way, people have been talking to me about this book and how I have to get it. I love timeline books like this. Up to now, I think what we know up to now, upon publication date of this book, she's dead. I'll buy that. Okay. I do think that Marvel knows that Wanda, both as an X-Man and as an Avenger, represents, there's a lot going on here. I think a lot of people like Elizabeth Olsen. I think she's a great actress. I really liked her as Wanda in the Marvel universe. And again, that's just one more Avenger that's missing. And I'm like, wow, take one of your most powerful characters once again off the table, who you might really need in Secret Wars. But it wouldn't surprise me if some kind of a variant comes back, or that all we know up to now that, yes, she's dead, but we just don't know the full story.
Yeah.
And, maybe Agatha Harkness knows, maybe the Coven of Chaos or whatever it's called now. What is it called now? The Darkhold Diaries.
Yeah.
There will be something happens there that we don't know about, but I'll accept that Elizabeth Olsen is dead now until we know more. But I'm sad because I like her.
Yeah.
And I like Elizabeth Olsen.
I mean, they were going to face a problem with her. Like if let's say she was still around in the MCU, the problem they're then going to face is what stands in her way. Like once we got into WandaVision and then into Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, she is so powerful, like so overpowered. Like what do you even do with her after that? You know what I mean?
I don't know. By the way, have you been watching Loki?
Yeah. Going into the final season, I've preferred this season over last season.
Well, the end of the last episode, I'm like, so the Marvel Universe is gone? Like, what?
The whole final episode is just going to be a black screen for 10 minutes. And
I got to tell you, I don't know who, we haven't really talked about that. I wasn't here to talk about it, but I loved how long they left that black screen on.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I'm like, that was audacious. I wonder if someone said, is a black screen on too long? No.
It was good.
That was one of the longest. I was like, I literally was holding my breath.
I haven't felt that much tension in a black screen since the end of The Sopranos.
Oh my God, yes. Yes.
All right, guys, whatever you think about this, did you think it was a missed opportunity for Wanda to have a happy ending? Did you like it like I did? I don't know. Whatever you guys think about that, let us know. All right. With that down, let's talk about this, shall we? The actors' strike may actually be coming to an end, and it's theoretically possible it could come to an end by the end of this broadcast today, or if not within the next 48 hours, or the nanny could come in and just blow up everything again, and we'll miss out on something. But here's the basic thing. You guys remember that last week we discussed that representatives for the studios, the AMPTP, basically set a drop-dead deadline. And they said, if we don't have a deal within about the next week, we are shutting down negotiations and we're not going to repick them up until January. Because they said, and we all kind of agreed with this. They said, look, if we can't get this thing settled by the end of next week, then we've missed our entire television dates. We can't get the new season of television done. We're not going to be able to get these movies into things that we're doing now. If we don't get it done within the next week, then we've got nothing to gain by even continuing negotiations until January. We're done. So they put out this drop dead deadline, about a week. And I said, and Chris and I both said on the show last week, you know what, maybe this is a good thing. Nothing can really get you motivated as good as a really harsh deadline with real consequences. And both Chris and I said, maybe this will motivate both sides to really get their asses off the couch and get a deal done. Well, Deadline has reported that they are now really close to a deal. This comes to us from Deadline, who write this. SAG-AFTRA and the AMPTP, that's the actors in the studios, continued to communicate intermittently Sunday as they close in on a possible reaching of a new deal that could end the 108-day strike. There is a feeling of optimism, a Guild source told Deadline today. Looks like we're in the final stretch. A senior studio source added, both sides express confidence a deal may be reached within days, but as before, caution that the situation is still fluid. From our understanding, SAG-AFTRA and the studios have gained significant traction on bridging the gap over what has been termed as a success-based compensation, which is what the studios wanted, for streaming shows and their casts. All right. Before I saw the Deadline story, I had somebody write to me over the weekend and said this. They've got what we're calling residuals, but much like the writer's deal isn't really residuals. I've been told they've got that done, that part is already done. I've been told that the final hitch is the AI issue. And this is the issue that I think the studios are just being idiots about. There's no justification for wanting to be able to claim the rights to the digital likeness of actors, especially without being able to significantly compensate them for using their image. Oh no, they were in our movie once, so we get to use their image whenever we want. No, screw that. That's stupid. But it sounds like everything else, compensation, benefits, health coverage, what will be called a residual, but is really more like a bonus system, like the writer's got. It sounds like all those are bridged. And if the studios can get their heads out of their asses and just realize that this AI issue should not happen at all, then, and it sounds like maybe they're getting closer to that. And maybe the actors cede a little bit extra to motivate them. I don't know. But it sounds like we could finally put this freaking nightmare behind us and get moving on this. Rob, we live in an era where it feels like it's a fool's errand to hope. But this is the same type of stuff we heard coming out literally a day or two before the writer's strike got settled. Do you think this is it? Do you think deal, or do you think we're getting our hopes up for nothing?
I think we are. I mean, like you, I've heard from a few people. I think we are. Because everybody, look, when no one's working, no one's making any money. when no one's making television or movies, the rest of the industry and all the other industries that serve the industry are not making money.
Yeah.
Everybody wants this to end. I think people thought it would end right away after the writer's strike ended. So I think most people want to see this go away and move forward, and everybody wants to go back to work. And I think that motivation is strong before going into the holidays. So I think, and by the way, if we were into November, I'd be more pessimistic. There's 2 more days left in October. That means they could get 3 weeks worth of shooting done before Thanksgiving, you know, and they could actually crank out an episode or 2 maybe before Christmas. They can get, I don't know if they can get up and running that fast, but something can get done. And I think if we don't have it today, I think by tomorrow. I think that by the end of October, that gives them 2 months. I know they've got the holidays, but at least that's a substantial chunk of time Deadpool 3 can go back into production.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I mean, who knows how much they can get done in that period of time. But something can, because right now nothing's getting done.
And, you know, once the ink dries, it's going to be a hellscape administratively and from a logistics point of view to try, because there are so many projects that we're supposed to have started and finished by now.
Yeah.
So there's such a backup, and everybody's going to be fighting for crews. Everybody's going to be fighting for talent, both in front and behind the camera. Everybody's going to be fighting for location security. It's going to be a madhouse as everybody sprints to get back into production. So let's keep our fingers crossed that by this time tomorrow, we're going to be talking about the end of the strike.
Hope so.
And everything gets back to normal. Because, my God, this is stretched on way too long. All right, guys. With that down, let's move on to this, shall we? You guys, of course, heard a couple of days ago the tragic news of the passing of actor Matthew Perry, raised up in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada, by the way, where he got his love for hockey, I'm sure. He was at a lot of LA Kings games. Passed away at the age of 54. And, I mean... I think we hear the passing of some celebrities and we go, sometimes we go, I didn't know they were still with us. Sometimes we go, man, that's a shame, but man, they lived a full, great life. But every once in a while, one happens that hits us out of nowhere and really seems more tragic. The passing of Matthew Perry seems like one of those. Still so young, so beloved. Fought a lot of demons. Like, he became very, very public about his addiction issues and stuff like that. He had finally got himself clean. At least that's what we hope. There's an investigation going on right now in his passing. We're not going to speculate about that. But one of the things that I noticed too was that as I watched some videos of fans sharing and other stuff like that, it seemed to me that Matthew, who was not exactly, let's be honest, an A-list Hollywood star, right? I noticed that the reaction seemed a lot more emotional than the average time that we see a celebrity pass away. Why is that? Well, listen, this comes to us from the folks over at Variety who wrote the following. They said this: Perry's untimely passing feels especially tragic in this light. Given last year's candid autobiography, the chapter, because he wrote an autobiography last year, which is really good, the closing nature of 2021 Friends reunion, and the growing opportunities for him outside of sitcoms, a second act felt imminent. Perry had plenty more to give. Even at Chandler's cultural peak, it was clear that the man behind him wasn't purely a comic. He could go big, and his skill as a humorist cannot be overstated. But so many of his greatest lines were pithy or tossed off. They found the honesty in the moment, his sarcasm grounded in natural timing that made even the baldest jokes fit the conversational patter. I remember I watched a video from the great Hank Azaria, who's just great in a ton of movies, but you'll know him as 100 Voices in The Simpsons as well. I love Hank Azaria. But Hank Azaria put out a video message because he was quite close with Matthew, and he just talked about how there's never been a funnier human being. He goes, hanging out with Matthew Perry for an evening was to end every evening with your sides hurting and yourself being in tears, like laughing so hard. That was just him. And you know what? He showed that he was more than just Chandler. I remember he did a great stint on West Wing. That was really good on. He also is in one of my top 20 favorite comedies of all time, The Whole Nine Yards. I love that movie and him in there. I mean, he was truly great. But as I gave a lot of thought to it, I come back to the same thing that I said about the passing of Carrie Fisher, which was there's a part of our brains that does not make a distinction between the people we stand in front of and spend time with and the people we spend time with who are just on our screen. And I think there's a lot of people in our culture. I wasn't the biggest Friends fan, but I watched every episode of Friends. There's a lot of people in our culture who spent a lot of time in their life hanging out with Matthew Perry on their screens. When they were going through something tough in their life, Chandler said something to make them laugh. And the way Matthew Perry played that character, this flawed, insecure, compelled by need to really want people to like him, hilarious, sensitive, and emotionally honest character that made people feel that when they were watching Friends, they were hanging out with friends. And that's just something our brain confuses sometimes. So like when Robin Williams or when Carrie Fisher passed away, I remember I got very emotional about both of those. I had only ever, I think, if I remember correctly, I only met each one of them like super, super brief. I didn't know them. And they didn't know me. And yet I got really emotional. I remember going through a process of that and thinking, why am I weeping? It's because in my mind, in my brain, I've spent so much time of my life with this person. Granted, not in flesh, but they were on my screen. They've made me laugh. They comforted me. They entertained me. They took my mind off my problems. They inspired me. And a hell of a lot of people. Friends is one of the most pop culturally relevant shows of all time. And Chandler, arguably, was the beating heart of that show. And I think that's why we see so much outpouring of emotion, so many people who have been so moved. And it just kind of adds to tragedy, because I agree with what they said in this article, Rob, when they said that it kind of felt like now that he had put a lot of his addiction stuff, whatever, it felt like the next chapter of his career was getting ready to start. It could have been great. But anyway, your thoughts on the passing of Matthew Perry and possibly why people seem to be reacting harder to his death than others.
Well, I remember, I think I first saw Matthew Perry in a River Phoenix movie, believe it or not, called A Night in the Life of Jimmy Reardon.
I remember that.
Which I like that movie. And, I actually met him a number of times because, believe it or not, one of the producers of my own movie, Free Enterprise, was one of the producers of The Whole Nine Yards.
Oh, wow.
So I met him somewhere between The Whole 9 Yards and The Whole 10 Yards on 2 occasions, and he was hilarious. And he was very warm. It's one of those things when you meet celebrities, but when you're in a position where you have a mutual friend and they introduce you, it's like okay to talk to them.
Right.
It's kind of that whole thing like, oh, I guess you're okay. And so he was really warm and funny and interesting. And again, I only had 2 interactions with him, but I think you make a really good point. When you 10 seasons. Friends ran 10 seasons. So that's like a whole part of a person's life. I mean, if you think that of a human life lasting to say 80, 10 years is a big chunk of a lifetime. And if you watch a show like Friends, you incorporate that show into your own life. You hear lines of dialogue when you're not watching the show and you relate to those characters. If you're a fan of whatever it is that you're a fan of, that thing, that pop culture thing permeates every part of who you are. So, like I feel I know the Corleone family because I've watched The Godfather a million times. People who grew up with Friends. I mean, you started watching it at 10 years old. You're in college when Friends goes off the air. That's a huge chunk of your life. And these people, even though they're fictional, you know more about them than sometimes family members that you only see once or twice a year.
Yeah.
So when somebody passes away, especially somebody so young, you can't help but see yourself reflected either against them or you the memories that you have with them or what they meant to you, and you've lost part of yourself. And I think a person, and also he was very open about his struggles, his memoirs. When he was promoting that book, he was on a lot of different talk shows. I remember because I watch a lot of those late night celebrity appearances, and he was very self-effacing and he went through a lot of stuff, and he wanted to help people by sharing his own story.
I remember in one of those interviews, he told a story that is tragic, but also really funny. He said, he was talking to the interviewer and he said, I didn't even realize I had a problem until. He said, where I realized, I don't know if you heard him tell the story. He goes, I realized I had a problem because on weekends, I started going to open houses. I would find open house listings, and I would go to open houses, and at some point I would sneak into the bathroom and I'd go through people's medicine cabinets to see what pills I could steal. And he said, and I did it because I knew I could get away with it, because the owner of the house is going to go, well, Chandler would never steal from me. And he told this story about it. And, you know, you were talking about like college years. Ann and I were talking the other day about this. And she goes, seriously, my entire college life was me and Kat. Kat was one of the girls she went to the Jonas Brothers concert with last night. She goes, I would go to Kat's dorm. We would order pizza and get chicken nuggets and watch Friends DVDs. She goes, that was college. And I think that was for a lot of people too.
Yeah. 10 years is a long time.
Yeah. And that show went out on top. Like
Yeah.
it could have gone another 5.
Yeah.
Like pretty easily. And anyway, again, a tragic passing, and why I think he'll be missed. And it's hitting a lot of people really hard. All right, guys. With that down, we still have a bunch of things that we need to go through. A Daredevil has a new showrunner, new directors. The producer from The Punisher has been there. Snow White, the remake, has just been pushed like a year. And Five Nights at Freddy's completely dominates the box office. How much? We're going to put into context for you. But before we get to that, we're going to take just a second and thank a couple of sponsors of today's episode of the John Campea Show podcast. Our friends at Quip and the makers of the most comfortable shoes I've ever worn, Vessi. Guys, we want to take a second to thank a sponsor of this video, Quip. Guys, you know that good health starts with good habits, and Quip makes it easy by delivering all the oral care essentials that you need to care for your mouth. For example, their incredible electric toothbrush. Guys, I've been using electric toothbrushes for years, and this is easily the best one I've ever owned. Timed sonic vibrations with 30-second pulses to guide a dentist-recommended 2-minute clean. A lightweight and sleek design for adults and kids with no wires or bulky charger to weigh you down. Reusable handles in a range of sleek metal hues, as well as bright plastic colors, sure to make a pop on your bathroom counter. Skip the batteries and snap into healthy habits with the new rechargeable electric toothbrush. All the features of the original Quip, plus one magnetic charge, powers up to 3 months of brushing. In addition to brush heads, Quip also delivers fresh floss, toothpaste, mouthwash, and gum refills every 3 months from just $7. So if you go to getquip.com/Campea right now, you'll get 20% off any electric toothbrush, mint and gum dispenser, or water flosser. That's your 20% off any electric toothbrush, mint and gum dispenser, water flosser at getquip.com/Campea. That's GETQUIP.com/Campea. Quip, the good habits company. Guys, we want to take a second to thank a sponsor of this video, Vessi. Now, you guys know I'm not exactly the most fashion conscious guy in the world, but I love a great pair of shoes that are comfortable and I can wear almost anywhere. And growing up in Canadian winters when my feet got wet a lot, waterproof would be nice too. Enter Vessi. They make the claim that they're not just fashionable and super comfortable, they're also waterproof. Now, you guys remember, when I got my first pair of Vessis, I put them to the ultimate waterproof test. I actually stuck my foot in my pool, my feet stayed dry, and the shoes stayed dry. Incredible. And they're the most comfortable pair of shoes I ever owned. Well, that made me want another pair. So I got another pair of Vessis that look great and just equal that world-class comfort that I got from that first pair of shoes. They are absolutely my favorite shoes that I've ever owned. Imagine your favorite sneaker style supercharged with waterproof technology and unmatched comfort. No matter how you like to stay active, Vessi has the shoes for you. Trail-ready high tops, effortless slip-ons, and classic court shoes, all with a waterproof twist. They are just as comfortable and stylish as your favorite sneakers, but even more versatile. So guys, if you're anything like me and you want the most comfortable pair of shoes that look great, that you can take out hiking, wear to work, go to the gym, or walk through the water and snow, go to Vessi.com/Campea and get yourself a pair today. Go to Vessi.com/Campea and get 15% off your order using the code Campea. And thank you to our friends at Quip and Vessi for sponsoring this episode. All right, guys, with that down, let's move on to this, shall we? You guys remember that they announced that they just scrapped all of Daredevil. Marvel had been working on this new Daredevil Born Again series. And then a couple of weeks ago, or last week, I think, they made the announcement that they are scrapping almost everything they'd already shot. And we're kind of going back to the drawing board. They released the directors that hadn't shot anything yet. They changed out writers. They did all that kind of stuff. Well, we have now found out that they've got an actual showrunner. You guys remember, the Disney Plus shows have not had showrunners. They've done a lot of things that traditional television hasn't done, and it's been to their own demise. And they talked last week about the fact that they're going to start employing some traditional television making techniques, including having a showrunner. And I think fans of the Netflix stuff are going to be happy because they went out and got one of the executive producers and writers from the Punisher series that was on Netflix. This comes to us from the folks at Variety who write this. Daredevil Born Again has found its new creative team. Now, forgive me if I butcher this name. Dario Scardapane, sure, who wrote and executive produced on Netflix's Marvel series The Punisher, which was awesome, by the way, will serve as the showrunner for the new Daredevil show after previous head writers Chris Ord and Matt Corman exited amid major creative overhaul. Ord and Corman will still be credited as executive producers. Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead, who directed on Marvel's Moon Knight and are the lead directors on season 2 of Loki, will step in to direct the rest of the first season of Daredevil Born Again as a part of the show's creative overhaul. All right, look, behind the camera stuff does not often excite, fans, right? They get excited hearing about casting, or they get excited hearing about, understandably, they get excited hearing about which characters are going to appear. But I think this is one of those situations where even average fans are going to get excited. An executive producer and writer of Punisher, which was fantastic. Not quite as good as Daredevil was, but I think easily the second best Netflix MCU series ahead of everything else that they did, with maybe the exception of Daredevil itself. It was great, and having that person now come in and showrun, fabulous. The directors, listen, I had problems with Moon Knight, but none of the problems had to do with direction. It was all about the creative room and the writer's room and what the heads of the show were doing. The direction was actually quite good. Like the episodes of Moon Knight all felt well put together and as executed as well as you could with the material they had. I have loved Loki season 2 so far. And to get those people to now come in and be the main directors of what's going to be Daredevil also sounds really exciting. However, something that I did not read in that quote, I've already seen some people making the jump that because they're bringing in the executive producer from Punisher to now be the showrunner, people are saying, oh, I guess this is the continuation of the Netflix Daredevil, right? Because we've been talking a lot about that's one of the big questions. Is this the Netflix Daredevil just now on Disney Plus? I've told you guys before, I do not believe it is. Charlie Cox has made many statements kind of affirming that this is something new, this is different. This same article in Variety, I didn't include in the quote, but let me read this here. They said this, well, Scardapane, that's the new showrunner, while his background includes The Punisher, which was itself a spin-off of Netflix's Daredevil series, here's the important part. Daredevil Born Again is not a continuation of the events from the Netflix show. Let me read that part again. Daredevil Born Again is not a continuation of the events of the Netflix show. Nonetheless, the stars of that show, Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio, are returning to their respective roles as Matt Murdock and Wilson Fisk. So, Rob, a couple of really interesting things in this report coming out. We got Punisher's executive producer as a showrunner, Loki season 2 directors coming to direct. A lot of excitement, I think, is built around this. What did you take away from these articles?
Well, I'm excited because everybody that they've added to this roster excites me. And Benson and Moorhead, I'm a huge fan of these two guys. I own all their movies: Resolution, The Endless, Spring, Synchronic, Something in the Dirt, their latest. There's that genre mumblecore. They've kind of made mumblecore sci-fi and horror films in a way. I think that they have a really unique take. I really like them a lot. And I think there's a reason why they keep getting hired by Marvel to do their various TV shows. I believe they directed the last episode of Loki too, which is right up their alley. So I'm excited. I like the Punisher show a great deal. Obviously, I like Charlie Cox. I like Vincent D'Onofrio. I love the Born Again storyline that Frank Miller wrote, even though it's been touched on so many times. I can't wait for this. I know that we should probably be cautious because they pulled the plug midstream. And I read that it was like a procedural, like it was a courtroom drama kind of a thing. And I'm like, no wonder they pulled the plug.
You know, I was okay with that. I was actually interested in that. Where the thing that made me do the evil side eye was when, this is what we got from the official reports, was that legal procedural, that's cool. Matt Murdock's a lawyer. Get into that.
Yeah.
Like the whole Daredevil persona is a part of him trying to right wrongs
That's true.
that he can't fix in the courtroom, right? But here's the part that made me go, what? The report came out that he never even shows up in the Daredevil costume until episode 4.
Yes.
And I'm like, the show is called Daredevil, right? And that was the part. Here's the one thing I'm worried about, though. No, I wouldn't say worried. Cautious about. I think Marvel right now is doing the absolute right thing by moving to showrunners and actually getting somebody in charge of the show, right? Before, they never had a showrunner. They would have some lead writers, but they all answered to a committee of about 12 network executives. Now you have a proper showrunner. That's great. But it's the first time they're doing it. And whenever you have the first iteration of anything, there's always some friction. There's always an acclimation process. I'm a little bit worried if that's going to show itself in the show or not. But I got to tell you, I like everything I'm hearing. I mean, this all looks good to me. And, you know, I think this news might re-spark that excitement about this show that is, quite frankly, over the past 4 or 5 months has been deteriorating. You could feel the excitement of this show deteriorating. Maybe this will bring it back. Do you think it can?
I think everything Marvel now is wait and see. I think everything, no matter what they announce, no matter what they do. And because we've already received 3 seasons of a Daredevil show that was really, really good. And while Daredevil was funny in She-Hulk, it's like, I think it's going to be wait and see.
Yeah.
I think they use the actors and writers strike. It's a great opportunity. While all this was going on, let's reset, let's rethink. They looked at what they'd shot. They realized it wasn't working the way they wanted it to, and they're making a change of course, which in my mind shows that cooler heads prevail, and they didn't just throw something out that didn't work. They had time to fix it, and I think that's good.
Yeah. We'll see how this all works out. All right, guys. With that down, let's move on to this, shall we? Now, of course, there's been a new Snow White on the horizon that's been coming out with a lot of interest and a lot of controversy as well. Not just because Rachel Ziegler has said some things that, quite frankly, were all factually true, but people didn't like that she said them. But even before that, there was some controversy about, well, what do you mean you're not, or what, like Peter Dinklage brought up an objection that you have dwarves in the movie and stuff like that. But then later, other objections that may not be played by dwarves. And Disney tries to say, no, look, just trust us. They're really more magical creatures than anything else. Well, a couple of big things came out about this movie. Number one, it's been moved by almost a full year. And they announced that while revealing a first image from the production of the movie, showing us Snow White and the dwarves. This comes to us from the folks over at CBR who wrote the following. The live-action Snow White movie has been given a new release date of March 21st, 2025. This is just under 1 year after what its release date had been, which was March 22nd, 2024. The news also follows rumors that the film was at risk of a serious delay, even though filming was mostly completed before the project was shut down due to the film industry strike. A new image, seen above, which we'll look at in just a second here, was also unveiled of Ziegler in the lead role, joined by her 7 companions, which finally reveals how Doc and pals will be depicted in the remake. All right, now, first thing, let's talk about the delay. One might, understandably, want to ask the question, well, if they were almost done shooting, I mean, once the strike ends, they can get right back and maybe finish it off, and maybe they could have had it done in time for March. That would be tough. But remember this. A little bit earlier in the show, we talked about when the ink dries on the new actor's contract, if it does in the next couple of days, which we hope it will, it's not like things that were in production can just go back into production. There's about 500 other productions that were supposed to be underway right now during the writer's strike. Crews are going to be dispersed. Crews are going to have pre-existing agreements and contracts with other productions that they may have to go to now. And just because the ink dries doesn't mean that they could have gone back into production on Snow White. They might not have been able to go back into production for another 6 months. And then you've got the post-production time. You got all that kind of stuff. I understand it getting delayed. I am curious about the length of the delay. The only thing I can really imagine for this long of a delay is that they really feel March is the best time. That's the best window for this kind of a movie. And if we can't get it out this March, we'll just push it to next March. All right. Well, aside from that, we got to take a look at this image, which you see behind me right now. And I'm going to be honest with you. I had two different thoughts when I saw this image. First of all, it's a very fairy tale looking kind of image. I dig the overall aesthetic of the image. I do. But so here are my two thoughts. My first thought was, oh, that's what they meant by we're kind of treating the classic Seven Dwarfs as like more several magical creatures, right? Because I started thinking, are they just going to look like regular human full-grown adults? Are they going to do whatever? They clearly are a live action representation of the classic Seven Dwarfs. Okay, I appreciate the approach. I do. I appreciate the approach. But the second thought I had was, while I appreciate the approach, I don't know that it looks all that good. I'm not like philosophically, I like what they're trying to do. I just don't know that it manifested the way they had it in their minds. Again, remember, this is all on a still image. Maybe once I see some video footage, it'll make me feel totally different about it. But that's just kind of my take on that. Anyway, Rob, there are two big things to address here with Snow White. One, a year-long delay, which, I mean, we just basically got another year-long delay with the next Mission Impossible movie too. But a year-long delay and our first look at the Seven Dwarfs. What do you think about either of these?
Well, I think when you say that that image has a really great fairy tale aesthetic to it, I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
I think that I looked at this and went, oh, okay, I get this. You know, that makes total sense to me. This looks like a production painting that somebody might do, even though I think it's supposed to be.
Good way to put it.
You know, it's like, I'm there. But that said, I'll bet you part of the delay is this sustained over the course of 90 minutes or 2 hours, this aesthetic, the going from a live action Snow White to characters that are obviously there's human beings playing them, but then you're having complete computer generated dwarves. And it's not like the dwarves that we saw in Peter Jackson's The Hobbit, which were all kind of the same size, which was done really well. He had because of the Lord of the Rings, he understood how to deal with scale. I'll bet you they have a real uncanny valley problem. And that's why they've delayed it a year. Because they've looked at this footage, they probably looked at finished effect shots coming in, and it just isn't working. This is just a theory that I would have, but looking at this image, it's going to be very difficult to have her interact with these characters, and it's supposed to be live action. This looks like a great fairy tale painting where I'm more interested in the aesthetic of the dwarves and the room that they're in, and I'm looking at her pasted into this image, like as a live action and I think that's the problem they have. The world and the dwarves look great. What doesn't work is Rachel Ziegler as Snow White in the environment.
The merging of the live action with the digital.
I think they have an uncanny valley problem. And that's why they figured, well, we know it's working, but the aesthetic isn't working. We've got to figure out how to make these two things work.
And that's just something they wouldn't, I mean, with the thing supposed to come out in March, and let's not forget, we're basically in November. Now, March is not that far away.
No.
So I was kind of expecting a delay. I just wasn't expecting a year on all that. But there you have it. Guys, what do you think about the image that we saw, about the year delay? Again, I agree with Rob. Conceptually, it looks like a living fairy tale. Even just from a still image, I'm getting a little bit of that uncanny valley. So I don't know. We'll see how this all works out. All right. Guys, with that down, let's move on to this, shall we? The new video game adaptation, Five Nights at Freddy's, has come out right where they said the projections would be. It made $80 million in its opening weekend officially, which is crazy good, especially considering that it also dropped on Peacock at the same time that it dropped in theaters, highlighting once again that Peacock doesn't have that many subscribers.
Right.
But it also makes you wonder if they could have added another 5 to 10 million to that total had they done this. Now, I want to put this in context because this movie had made $80 million opening weekend. The initial box office rough projection was that it made 78. Now that the actuals has come in today, it's actually gone up by like 1.8 million to $80 million, which is right where they said the projection was. But I want to give context to just how impressive that is. Let's take a look at all the films Universal has put out this year, shall we? And where Five Nights at Freddy's comes in on that. Well, Megan, which everybody is, acknowledges that was a big hit for them, especially with the low budget, that had an opening weekend of $30 million. Knock at the Cabin had an opening weekend of 14. Cocaine Bear, which everybody raves about, $23 million opening. Now, of course, you had Super Mario Brothers, the movie, at $146 million. Renfield had an opening of 8. Fast X. Guys, go back a year. Let somebody look at you in the face and tell you, a year from now, we're going to be talking about how Five Nights at Freddy's has a bigger opening weekend than Fast X. You would have slapped them and called them silly. And yet, here we are. Fast X made $67 million. Teenage Kraken made an opening weekend of $5 million. They never should have made that movie. Oppenheimer made 82. Last Voyage of the Dementor made 6. Strays made 8. The Exorcist Believer made 26. And Five Nights at Freddy's, again, that number needs to be adjusted. You know what? I'll adjust that right now. That's the magic of technology, ladies and gentlemen. Made $80 million. The only films out of Universal stable this year that made more in opening weekend than Five Nights at Freddy's. A movie that was made for a very low budget, frankly, isn't that great. Not horrible, but it's not great. It was only outperformed by Super Mario Brothers, the number 2 box office movie of the year, and Oppenheimer. Those are the only ones. It beat out Fast X. It beat out Exorcist. It beat out Cocaine Bear. It beat out Mega. By miles, it beat those. And I think this is a testament to just how popular this game is with people. It's a real strong testament to that. But Rob, this is interesting too. I want to get your take on this because I had a conversation with a friend of mine the other day about this movie, and they made an observation that at first I kind of wrote off, but the more I think about it, my friend said this, that the box office results of this movie prove that the audience are looking for recognizable IP, but not necessarily the next in a long string of sequels. So what else fits that description? Mario Brothers fits that description. Very recognizable IP, but not, part 7. Barbie fits that description. Big recognizable IP, but it's not Barbie 4. And now Five Nights at Freddy's comes out and does very well too. As a lot of people think, well, people don't want franchises, and maybe that's not it. Maybe it's just people don't want part 7 of a franchise as much. Anyway, Rob, what is your reaction to this? Let's just call it what it is. Complete box office dominance by Five Nights at Freddy's, particularly given the fact that it was also a streaming release. And what do you think about how it compares to the rest of Universal's releases this year?
Well, I think it's really interesting because to me, I look at this as another Blumhouse triumph.
Yeah.
Because, and if you look, just a few weeks ago, Blumhouse, with their celebrated $400 million acquisition of The Exorcist, they made a movie that nobody really liked, and it didn't do the kind of business that they wanted it to do. And people have said, well, they wanted it because Universal wanted to incorporate The Exorcist into like their Halloween Horror Nights, and they can use it in their theme parks or whatever. And like you just said, The Exorcist is from 1973, the movie at least. Five Nights at Freddy's is, again, a modern IP. People grew up with it. They loved it. They acquired it, and I have not seen the movie. I've heard the movie's actually terrible. I mean, I've heard it's really bad.
I don't think it's terrible.
It's not terrible.
I don't think it's terrible. It feels like it was made by a first-time director.
Okay.
It feels sloppy.
Well,
but there's good stuff in it.
Okay, there's good stuff in
redeemable
it.
things.
There's enough to satisfy the discerning fans, which I think is a good thing. But I think you're absolutely right. Why would somebody, again, I always say on my own show that pop culture has a 20-year half-life. After 20 years, it's a different generation. Nobody cares. This is exactly what you said. We've seen Barbie. We've seen Five Nights at Freddy's. These are IPs that are recognizable that had never been translated into film like this before. So when they turn into events. Five Nights at Freddy's and Barbie, there were people clamoring for this movie.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you have to start looking at is rather than trying to, because look, recycling old IP is lazy. And it's something that's easily done, and it doesn't necessarily always succeed. It's a lot harder to pick out an IP that has yet to be translated, and there's more risk involved. But I think as we see proven once again, nobody in Hollywood ever gets really successful following a trend. You have to set trends, and that's true of IP. And we've seen it over and over again this year.
Yeah, one of the things I said about Five Nights at Freddy's coming out, I was like, well, there's only two male characters, adult male characters in this movie. One's our protagonist. I wonder which one's the villain. Like it's like, well, I remember somebody comes on screen. I won't say who it is, but you'll figure it out. Somebody comes on screen. It's like, well, that's the only other guy in this movie, so I'm going to guess that's the bad guy. And sure enough, anyway, that being said, it is kind of incredible. One of our live chatters here, coming in 2 years, Six Nights at Freddy's. Which they're going to do. Of
course. And again, Blumhouse keeping this did not break the bank. They did not spend $100 million making this movie. Go Blumhouse.
So there you have it, guys. What do you think about the results of the movie that had big, huge opening? Like right up there with Oppenheimer, bigger opening weekend than Fast X. I want us to wrap our heads around that a little bit. And what did you think about Five Nights at Freddy's? I did not think it was particularly good. I didn't think it was awful. Maybe you loved it. Maybe you hated it. Whatever. Let us know what you guys think. All right, guys. With that down, we are now going to go over and start taking your questions that you guys have sent in. But before we do, we're going to take another moment here and thank a couple of more sponsors to today's episode. Our friends at Marine Lair and my mobile service provider, and they should be yours, Mint Mobile. Guys, we want to take a second to thank a sponsor of today's video, Marine Lair. It's official, guys. I have found the softest t-shirt of all time, so soft, it's ridiculous. All thanks to the San Francisco-based Marine Lair. Marine Lair is the go-to brand for great fitting and stylish closet staples. Their clothes are that perfect mix of laid-back style and also looks and feels premium. It's time to invest in a wardrobe that will actually last. For a limited time, the John Campea Show viewers and listeners get an exclusive 15% off with the code Campea15 at marinelair.com. Now, guys, you know I am not the most fashionable guy in the world, but I appreciate a good looking shirt, but more importantly, I appreciate a comfortable shirt. And the shirts that I've got from Marine Lair fit both of those beautifully. And they've even got sizes like Marge, which is in between medium and large, so everyone can get their perfect fit. The best part, if you buy any 3 tees from Marine Lair, you automatically get 20% off. And Marine Lair goes way beyond just t-shirts too. They've got super laid back overshirts, pants, jackets, and all the cozy layers you want for the cooler seasons. I think we can all admit that the perfect tee can be hard to find. Look no further than Marine Lair. For a limited time, get 15% off with the code Campea15 at marinelair.com. That's Campea15 for 15% off your entire order at marinelair.com. Saving your closet one shirt at a time. Guys, we want to take a second to thank a sponsor of today's video, Mint Mobile. Signing your life away to a big wireless provider is kind of like being trapped on a roller coaster from hell. Sure, it looks like fun at first. They probably even threw in a free phone, but now you can't get off. Month after month of insane bills and unexpected thrills, like overages and surprise fees. If that sounds like your current big wireless plan, it's time to get off the ride with Mint Mobile. For a limited time, wireless plans from Mint Mobile are just $15 a month. That's unlimited talk, text, and data for just $15 a month. You guys know before I came to Mint Mobile, I was paying triple what I am paying now on the standard big wireless plan, and I will never go back. All plans come with unlimited talk, text, and high-speed data delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. Use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number along with all your existing contacts. To get your new unlimited wireless plan for just $15 a month and get the plan shipped right to your door for free, go to mintmobile.com/Campea. That's mintmobile.com/Campea. Cut your wireless bill to just $15 a month at mintmobile.com/Campea. And thank you to our friends at Marine Lair and Mint Mobile for sponsoring this episode of the John Campea Show podcast. I've been watching the discussion in the live chat, people saying they need to cross over Fast X and Five Nights at Freddy's. The F is for family. Rob, what did you say? You would go
I would go see that, at Jurassic Park.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Include Jurassic Park.
Let's do it.
See the animatronic riding a T-Rex? Go for it. All right. That down, guys. Let's get over to your questions here, shall we? We're going to start off with the Super Chats. Jonathan, what we got up first?
We've got Jesse Roy, who says, rest in peace, Matthew Perry, watching Friends now.
Yeah, I remember in the car when we saw this, Ann said, I bet you as soon as we turn on our Google Chromecast, the headline is going to be Friends, and sure enough, it was. And yeah, definitely a big loss. All right, what's next?
We've got Damaris Love, who says, hey, John, with Percy Jackson a good month away, should there be more promotion for it?
Remember, it's still a television show, right? And they don't market television shows the way they market movies. They wait till they get a little bit closer, then they do a big push. So no, I think they're doing fine right now, and I'm looking forward to seeing it. All right, what's next?
Okay, we've got Tauhir, who writes, Part 1, South Africa have won the 2023 Rugby World Cup, becoming the first 4-time champions and only the second team to go back-to-back. Wow. And Part 2, after Invictus, I'm hoping for another sports biopic based on these 2 wins. Any sports stories you wish to be adapted to the silver screen?
The one sports story that I would love to see adapted is the Paul Henderson goal, the Canada Cup, Canada versus Russia. It's the most significant and important hockey series in history. I know Americans will look at Miracle on Ice, but far more relevant. I mean, it was war. It was Canada versus Russia. I can't remember. It was like an 8-game series. It wasn't just one game. It was an 8-game series. I mean, it was bloody. It was brutal. And it ended with this iconic goal with Paul Henderson scoring the winner. And I remember one of the thrills of my life, I got invited by Paul Henderson to go and meet him at his office and have lunch with him one day. And it was like, because my dad idolized like Paul Henderson, would talk about the goal, right? The Paul Henderson goal. That's one I would love to see them do a movie about. All right, what's next?
Ryan Quick writes, John Giovanni Campea, I was shocked to discover that you've not seen the movie Big Night. As an Italian, you, not me, please, I beg of you to watch this absolute gem of a movie as soon as possible. Grazie and bring on the filthy.
I'll be on. By the way, it was a $20 super chat.
Oh, yeah,
thank you so much for sponsoring us on that level. I've never even heard of it.
Stanley Tucci, dude.
Which one is this?
You'd love it. It's a movie about food in a restaurant.
Well, he's got an entire series right now.
Yeah, it's kind of derived out of that in a way.
Is this recent? Is this old?
No,
I want
it's
to say
older.
10 years old.
No, it's older than that.
Oh, that 15?
Did it actually get a theatrical release?
Oh, yeah.
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 How did I not see this?
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for keeping it on
There
my
you go.
radar. I mean, that image alone makes me want to see it. So there you go.
Yeah, it's
But
older. It must be, 20 years old, 25?
It's going
yeah, that looks
it's in the
older than
90s.
I'm old.
2013. But
Yeah.
who knows? All right. So
All right.
Tucci's got hair.
Oh, yeah.
All right. What's next?
Richard K. with the Highlander remake coming with Cavill, I would like to see Denzel as a version of Ramirez and Batista as the Kurgan. Your thoughts?
I don't think Denzel is a Ramirez. I don't think Denzel's a Ramirez. Somebody, I think one of the fans, or it might have been Chris or Jonathan or Ray, they said it, and then I'm like, yes, Antonio Banderas should be Ramirez.
Oh, yeah.
I'd also buy Keanu Reeves as a Ramirez. I think it might have been Chris or somebody else suggested just bring back Christopher Lambert. This time he's Ramirez. But I don't think he'd make a great Ramirez ever. I now have this is why I don't like
Or
doing
Javier Bardem.
Or that's the other name we brought up was Javier Bardem would also be great. But this is why I don't like doing X actor and X role stuff, because now all I can see is Antonio Banderas as Ramirez. Javier Bardem would also be great. Maybe a little bit outside their price range to get a Javier Bardem in this, but I could totally see Antonio Banderas as
But $100 million for a Highlander movie?
Who Wants to Live Forever, Rob?
I'd don't know.
This is going to be great. I cannot wait. All right, what's next?
Raymond Verada writes, rest in peace, Chandler Bing. I'd watched reruns of Friends after graduate school classes. It hits you hard because we all relate to friends who become your family.
Again, one of the, maybe arguably the most pop culturally relevant comedy ever. Because while shows like Seinfeld and stuff like that might have been better, like that show was just a part of people's lives. I mean, it defined almost an entire generation. It was incredible. And one of the first shows ever where all the cast members literally got $1 million an episode and like continued to make ridiculous amounts of money on that show for the rest of their careers. All right, what's next?
We got Venkat, who says, I feel incredibly sad for Perry's passing. Friends was my intro to Hollywood. Spent the last 2 nights watching Friends and Perry's interviews regarding his addiction. The man is a great human being.
Yeah, I mean, especially considering he became so open about sharing the struggles with his addiction and telling some not so flattering stories about stuff that he did. But yeah, I mean, for a lot of people, that was like their introduction to a lot of that stuff. And I mean, it's just, he was so good in that role. He was so good. I really think he was the heart of the show. Not that he was the most important character, but his was the most humanity, in the show. And I think a lot of people probably identified with Chandler. And again, he proved that he was great outside of Friends as well. And it would have been great to see him get the next chapter of his career, this side of 50, but we'll never get that chance. All right, what's next?
We got Richard K. Will we get a Spy 2 with McCarthy returning?
You know what? You would think, Rob, that they would have gone into that fairly quickly because it made a really good amount of money for what it was.
I liked it.
Yeah, but I think they had Jason Statham in that one too, right? Yeah. I feel like every day that passes lessens the chance. Do you think they'll get around to doing that?
I don't know. Maybe, but I don't see it. I think it was kind of a one-off.
Yeah, I think you're right.
It didn't make enough money.
True. Yeah. What's next?
We've got Talkie75 says, I believe that an R rating would have made Venom better. All these bloodless beheadings threw me off the movie momentarily. They look so fake.
I 100% disagree. I thought it worked. I don't think the R rating would have done anything for it because look, the problems that most people talk about when they discuss Venom, even I, somebody who really liked Venom a lot, even the problems that I will bring up with it, none of that is rectified by having more blood. Like wouldn't make the characters any better. That doesn't make the story any better. It doesn't make the one-liners any better. It doesn't make, it just wouldn't. And I actually thought when you go into Venom 2, which was with, why am I freezing on the name of Venom's red offspring? Carnage. I mean, you get into that prison scene. There's a lot of people losing their subscriptions to life in that prison scene. There's a lot of killing. And they were able to do it the PG-13. And again, the problems with that movie are not fixed by, oh, there's more blood on the wall. Ooh, now this scene is better. I got to disagree with you on that, Taki. I don't think it would have made any difference. And I loved Venom just the way it was, by the way. All right, what's next?
We got Damaris Love is back. Big Mike, Clark Duncan meeting Matthew, saying what place you looking for, the pearly gates. You're in the right place. 2 of the stars of the whole 9 yards. By the way, I was really sad when Michael Clark Duncan passed away. That dude was so unique.
He was. I loved his voice.
Oh, he had one of the best, but he has one of the best lines that only he can do. So me saying it isn't doing any justice, but in the whole 9 yards, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit, and again, only he can do it in that voice. There's nothing finer than a fine naked woman holding a gun. And the way he said it in that Michael Clark Duncan voice, and I don't care what anybody says. He's not Vincent D'Onofrio. He was a great Kingpin.
He was a great Kingpin.
He was absolutely.
And he was great in The Green Mile.
Oh, he's so good. Hold my hand, boss. Oh, he was so good. And of course, the 2 of them were great together in the whole 9 yards. All right, what's next?
Samir writes, do you guys think we will ever see White Vision again? I feel like it was just teased 2 years ago and everyone just forgot about it.
I'm going to say this, and my opinion has changed over time. I don't think we are. And you know what? We don't need to. I mean, it ended with White Vision having a bit of an epiphany, his awakening, thanks to the other Vision. and he decided, time for me to go. And if we never see that Vision again, I think that's okay. I love Paul Bettany as Vision. Don't get me wrong. If we find out tomorrow that he is coming back, I'm going to be very happy. But the more time that goes on, I don't think we are. And I'm actually pretty okay with that. I don't know. What do you think, Rob?
Well, I have my white Vision hot toys, so I see him a lot.
I see him every day.
But I think you might be right. I mean, that was a storyline. They could bring him back. I mean, they need people if they're going to make another Avengers movie.
They're running out of Avenger options.
I mean, yeah, I don't know. Maybe we'll see him again.
All right, what's next?
Aspor writes, listening to you talking about people feeling like they hung out with Chandler made me realize you guys are that for me. Cheers for being my Chandler.
Oh, thank you. You know, it's funny because it's when people do come up and meet us and stuff like that, you forget, like I forget, that there are a lot of people who maybe 3, 4, 5 times a week spend 1 to 2 hours a day hanging out with us, talking about movies. And so I've had a lot of people who do come up and introduce themselves, say, I feel like I know you because I spent so much time for you. And that is really an honor. And thank you for that. And I appreciate that very, very much. Thanks for being here. All right, what's next?
Duck writes, I haven't loved Gen V, but the way everything came together before the finale was amazing. Made the journey much more worth it. Can't wait for the boys.
I got to tell you, I am passionately in love with Gen V. I love this show so much. They do. And again, like I said, I think this is a marvelous show, even if you take out all the superpowers. I think it's a great show. But this is so true to the boys. At every episode, there's some kind of twist, something that changes your perspective of the show and all that kind of stuff. And they have not brought in characters from the boys for gratuitous, like, look, everybody, remember that person? Every time they have brought in somebody that's been in the boys, it's served a purpose. Like everything from the vice presidential candidate. That was perfect. Perfect bringing her in at that point, and the way that ended and where things are now. I cannot wait for the finale. Have you been following Gen V? I haven't been. Had a chance to ask you.
You know what? I caught up, and I'm still traumatized by the violence against the male member in that show. I'm just saying.
That was disturbing.
I'm like, it was great, but it was totally disturbing. No, I have to tell you, I think that's the way to do. That shows what planning, thinking about what you're doing, how far that can go. And I think as a spin-off show, as an addition to the boys universe, what a terrific program. I love the casting. I loved, it was great.
Did you watch the puppet slaughter? That to me is going to be the scene that I remember out of the show was the puppet slaughter.
No, I'm caught up.
Oh my God. That's so good. All right, what's next?
Okay, we got Kyler who says, thoughts on Agnes Varda, her 2017 documentary, Faces Places, is one of my all-time favorites.
Go ahead.
Well, I'm a fan of hers. As a matter of fact, I think there's a new box set of her movies coming out from Criterion. And I want to say Cleo, what's the name of that movie? Cleo from 4 to 6. I love that movie.
5 to 7.
5 to 7. 4 to 6. And,
working 9 to 5.
Yeah, 4 to 6. It's 5 to 7. It's French or German, But no, she's one of the great female directors of all time.
And
people don't know much about her.
All right, what's next?
These Nuts says Nagano was robbed.
Oh, I'm not gonna lie to you. I didn't watch the fight. I didn't care.
You didn't?
No, not at all. An MMA guy fighting a boxing guy in boxing, there's nothing to see there. And ever since they clearly faked and threw the fight where Jake Paul fought Mayweather and it went the distance, tell me
Logan
Paul, thank you. Tell me this is all fake without telling me it's all fake. So I have no interest in that. Don't care. But Nagano is a bad man.
I want to see him box again. He did way better than I thought he would. There's a lot of people who thought he won the fight.
Yeah, I'm still not convinced it wasn't all staged. But yeah, that's me. All right, what's next?
Chef Rigo. If the Squid Game reality show releases weekly, I hope in the final episode Netflix shows a teaser of season 2 for the real show.
Well, remember, it's not necessarily going to be weekly. It's 10 episodes, releasing a couple of episodes each week for 3 weeks. So it's probably going to be 3 episodes, 3 episodes, 4 episodes, or 4 episodes, 3 episodes, 3 episodes, something like that. I don't know that they've been in production of season 2 yet. I know they're doing a season 2. And I'm going to say they haven't. I'm just saying I don't know if they've actually even been in production of season 2 yet. So we'll find out. All right, what's next?
AL writes, John, what are you dressed as today?
Well, none. The last week was a costume a day, building up to Halloween. So tomorrow I will be back in costume. By the way, I'm going to put up a poll in the community tab asking which of the costumes that I wore do you guys want me to wear on Halloween? So whether it's the Jason Kelsey, Peacemaker, Jedi, Hogwarts student, I'm going to put up a poll and you guys tell me which costume to wear on Halloween tomorrow, and that's the one I'll wear. All right. Is that it for the super chats?
Yeah.
All right. We're running long today. We had a lot of stories, but we're going to get through a couple of our member questions as well. So, Jonathan, what do we got up here?
And Jexter says, it's a shame that they tried to make Daredevil courtroom procedural when they should have done that with She-Hulk.
Oh, they definitely should have done that with She-Hulk.
Yeah.
Definitely. But again, I have no issue with them doing that in Daredevil. I think that's an important part of Matt Murdock. And again, it plays into the story about his Daredevil persona is part of righting the wrongs that he can't do in the courtroom. Again, I just got my eyebrows raised when they found out he wasn't going to even be in the costume until like episode 4. Like, that's no good. All right, what's next?
CJ Rebirth says, rewatch The Way of Water. Still just as awesome as it was last year, and Payakan is best space whale. Also, watched the movie Yes Day with Jennifer Garner and Jenna Ortega, and I enjoyed it a lot.
I'll tell you what, I really liked Avatar 2. I liked it a lot. I think I liked it more than the first one. And I remember I took Ann to see it, and she was like, because I saw it before I saw it with Ann, and she just adored it. It is fabulous. Where does James Cameron go from here? I don't know. But how much did that movie end up making? It also joined the $2 billion club,
Oh,
did it
yeah.
not? Yeah, it did. Like, crazy. That's right. 3 of the 4 top grossing films of all time are all James Cameron films. Nuts.
It made, I have it right here, $2.3 billion.
$2.3 billion. Dear God.
That is a lot of Black Adams.
That's a lot. That is many.
How many
Many
that's so
Black
funny.
That's
That's the new
almost
indicator.
6.
Oh,
Almost
yeah.
6 Black Adams. All right, what's next?
All right. Bungo Bilbo writes, hey, all, having just finished Baldur's Gate 3, do you think the D&D movie would have done better if it was released after Baldur's Gate 3? I know my interest went right up after playing the game. Thanks and stay filthy.
Maybe. Remember the Dungeons and Dragons movie, which by the way was fucking awesome, and shame on you if you didn't see it, because it's great. But it faced many uphill struggles, right? People who don't play the game are probably looking at it thinking, well, I don't know anything about Dungeons and Dragons, so why would I go see the movie? Compiled with the fact that there was another Dungeons and Dragons movie made many years ago that sucked. It had a big uphill struggle, so it was not able to overcome that. It lost money, but I'm hopeful that they'll just make another one anyway, thinking that the first one was so well received, and trust me, guys, it's really fun. That they're going to do another one. So hopefully that happens. All right, what's next?
Amin says, I heard that Hollywood is usually off work when it comes to November, December with Thanksgiving and Christmas. Assuming the actor strike gets resolved within the next week, fingers crossed, will film shows go straight back into production and filming, or will things go slow because of the holidays?
No, I look, the holidays are just a couple of days. So I think they will go really hardcore. Obviously, they're not going to make people work on Thanksgiving Day, and they're not going to make people work on Christmas Day or maybe even Boxing Day, but it'll just be a couple days. I think they'll get back into it pretty quick. All right, what's next?
Jay Superboy says, hi, John. Saw Pluto on Netflix last night. Was going to watch just one episode. Ended up binging the entire season. Turns out it's an Astro Boy remake. Who knew? And oh yeah, Invincible comes out this week. Keep it filthy.
Never heard of Pluto. Other than the streaming service. I know the Pluto streaming service. I've never heard of the series. But yeah, by the way, reviews have started dropping for the first half of Invincible Season 2, and they're all very good. The reviews have been very, very strong. So I'm looking forward to that. All right, let's take one more. What's next?
Okay, we got Joel Checky who writes, so I believe Loki Season 2 finale comes out the same week that the Marvels releases. I think that timing is just a coincidence. Seems unlikely to me, but who knows?
I feel like this happens a lot. And whether it is a coincidence or isn't a coincidence, I honestly don't. Look, you're not going to base your movie release around when a schedule of a television thing is. I don't think they really cared. I think they picked the date because they thought that was the right date. So probably is a coincidence. But listen, with the amount of product that Marvel has been putting out in the recent years, you're going to have that overlap. I mean, it's going to happen. So I personally probably think it's a coincidence. I don't know, Rob, what do you think?
Well, it was moved. Captain Marvel was moved. I mean, maybe
Oh
it
yeah,
had some
twice
kind
I
of
believe
port-
it moved. I think it moved twice.
Yeah, but I don't think necessarily the end of Loki is going to feed into Captain Marvel. I don't
or
think
interfere with it.
or interfere with it. So I would say probably not. But they do use it. Makes sense. One Marvel show generates excitement, hopefully, for another Marvel project. I mean, doesn't necessarily mean they're directly tied to one another, but I can see that. I don't think it was done by design, though.
All right, guys. And that'll do it for today's installment of the John Campea Show podcast. Thank you so much for being here and making this show part of your day. Big special thank you to all you guys who sent in questions, whether you're our channel members. Thank you for being channel members, by the way, or those you used in Super Chat, number one, because you gave us interesting things to talk about. But number two, you supported our channel by doing it. And all of us involved with the show here, thank you guys so very much for your support. I want to thank the people in the room with me, Mr. Ray Ora,
Hey.
Jonathan Voico,
Later, guys.
writer, director, producer, Robert Meyer Burnett, and most of all to all of you guys, thanks for being here. My name's John Campea, and until next time, my friends, bye-bye.